The movie is about a guy named Robert McCall who lives in Boston. Every day, he works at a store called Home Mart that sells tools and stuff for fixing things. Robert is just a regular guy with a normal life. At his job, he becomes friends with a co-worker named Ralphie. Ralphie is a bit heavy, and he's trying to get in shape for a test to become a security officer. So, Robert gives him advice on what to eat. He tells Ralphie to skip foods with lots of carbs and instead eat things with lots of fiber. Robert is a really organized guy. He's super careful and does everything in a very orderly way. He even times how long it takes to do things using the stopwatch on his watch. In the evenings, Robert likes to hang out at a restaurant he goes to regularly. He always brings his own tea bags and silverware because he's very particular about the way he likes things. He's so neat that he sets up his table just right, making sure everything is in its place and the table is clean. One night at the restaurant, it's not too busy. There aren't many people there. Among the customers is a pretty girl named Alina. She says hi to Robert and asks him about the book he's reading. They chat for a bit, and then Alina says goodbye and leaves. She calls a taxi to go home. The day after, Robert went back to his usual stuff. He went to work at Home Mart, talked with Ralphie and his other friends from work, and then he went back home. After tidying up his place, he had dinner. In the evening, just like always, Robert headed over to his favorite diner with a book to read. While Robert was at the diner, guess who showed up? Alina. But this time, she looked quite different. She was wearing revealing clothes and lots of makeup. She was just about to order a drink when her phone rang. It was her boss calling. Alina turns out to be a teenage prostitute who's working under the name Terry for the Russian mob Slavy. That night, Alina was required to serve a customer who had picked up Alina in front of the diner. Alina was on the phone, trying to escape from her job. She talked to Slavy and trying to convince him not to make her serve the customer because the guy treats her badly. But Slavy didn't care and told her she had to do it right away. He reminded Alina that she owed him and even threatened her life. Alina had no other option but to follow what Slavy said. After the call, Alina left the diner and went to the man who had picked her up earlier. Robert noticed her and looked at her curiously. The next day, Robert was there to support Ralphie, who was exercising to lose weight for a security officer test. Even though Ralphie found it tough and almost gave up due to the intense training, Robert kept cheering him on and helping him wholeheartedly so Ralphie could achieve his dream of being a security guard. To cut a long story short, Robert returned to his usual routine, including going to his favorite restaurant and spending time reading. On that night, though, Alina was already there before him. Alina came up to Robert's favorite spot and asked if it was okay to sit there. Robert said yes, and they started talking. He noticed some bruises on her face. After chatting for a bit, Robert learned that Alina was working for Slavy because of a debt, even though she actually dreamed of being a famous singer. She gave Robert a CD with one of her songs, and he was really happy and promised to listen to it. After a casual chat at the diner, Robert offered to walk Alina home. They had an interesting conversation until a car pulled up in front of them. Out stepped a man, Slavy, who turned out to be Alina's boss. Slavy was angry with Alina for disappointing a customer the night before and demanded compensation. He got physical with her, slapping and choking her. Robert wanted to help, but Slavy warned him to stay out of it. Slavy even gave Robert a business card, suggesting he could use their services too. Then, Slavy took Alina away. After that night, Robert didn't see Alina at the diner anymore. One evening, a diner employee told Robert that Alina had been badly hurt by someone and was in the hospital. Learning this, Robert rushed to the hospital and found Alina there with a face full of bruises. Her co-worker Mandy explained that Alina had been beaten by Slavy because she stood up against him and didn't obey his orders. Seeing Alina's terrible state and how she suffered from mistreatment by customers and her pimp, Robert felt really sorry for her. He decided he had to help Alina out of these tough situations. The scene shifts to Slavy entering his fancy restaurant and heading to his office. Some of his men are there, waiting to give him money from people who owe Slavy. Soon, Robert walks into Slavy's office and offers money to free Alina. He wants her to stop working for Slavy. But Slavy rejects the offer, saying he can make more money if Alina keeps working for him. Since Slavy turns down the offer, Robert takes the money back and starts walking to the door. But at the door, Robert doesn't leave right away. Instead, he locks the door and faces Slavy and his men. He watches them and the things in the room. He figures it would take him just 16 seconds to take down everyone in the room. Then Robert acts swiftly and takes down Slavy and his henchmen with a cold, expressionless face. Slavy begs for his life, but it's too late. Robert had offered a way out earlier, but Slavy refused it. After that, Robert goes back home and resumes his normal life. In the following days, he sees a news report on TV about Slavy's murder and the others. The police think it's part of a gang rivalry, as such conflicts often happen. The scene changes and we meet Teddy Renson, a guy who just arrived in the United States. He hurries to the spot where Slavy was killed. Teddy is a messenger for Vladimir Pushkin, Slavy's boss. He's sent to figure out who's behind the murder and find the real person responsible. Teddy used to be in the Russian secret police and knows how to fight, so he quickly figures out that the one who killed Slavy and his guys wasn't just some random person, it was someone skilled in combat. At the same time, Robert is really surprised by the news that Ralphie quit his job. When Robert visits Ralphie at home, he sees Ralphie helping his mom clean up their shop. Some bad cops had set the place on fire because Ralphie's mom wouldn't pay them off. Because of this, Ralphie decided to leave his job at Home Mart and help his mom with the store. In the evening, Robert decides to help Ralphie. He secretly follows the corrupt cops who were taking money from small businesses like Ralphie's mom's shop. Robert records their actions and confronts them, telling them to stop or he'll expose them. The bad cops try to fight back, but Robert is stronger. He beats them up and they give back what they took from the people. They stop their shady business. With venture capital, Ralphie's mom can fix up her shop and restart her business. Ralphie goes back to work at Home Mart, and after tough training, he becomes a security officer, just like he wanted. In another place, Teddy is talking to gangsters who were often involved with Slavy. He doesn't mind using violence to get the info he needs about who's behind Slavy's murder, but he doesn't get any leads from them. So he decides to talk to the prostitutes who worked for Slavy. Finally, he learns about Alina, who had issues with Slavy recently. Teddy talks to Mandy, Alina's coworker, and pressures her to share all the details about Alina's troubles with Slavy. Mandy tells Teddy about a black man who visited Alina in the hospital. Then Teddy kills Mandy. After hearing from Mandy, Teddy checks security cameras at the hospital and where Slavy was murdered. He spots a figure that's hard to make out, but it could be Robert. One day, Robert faces a situation where he has to act quickly to stop a guy robbing a cashier at Home Mart, someone he knows from work. Since there were kids around, Robert decides to give in to the robber's demands, including the cashier's gold ring. Robert lets the guy go, but he remembers the car's license plate. The next day, the cashier is surprised to find her ring back in the register, and Robert is seen cleaning the big hammer he used to knock out the robber. That night, surprisingly, Teddy comes to Robert's house, claiming to be a cop investigating Slavy's murder. Teddy asks about where Robert was on the night of the murder, at a fancy restaurant. Robert, who's good at handling these situations, calmly answers to avoid suspicion. After questioning, Teddy leaves, but they both know they're lying. Robert figures out Teddy isn't a real cop, and Teddy thinks Robert is behind Slavy's murder. Realizing the Russian mafia is after him, Robert plans to leave his apartment. To sum it up, Teddy sends one of his guys to attack Robert at the diner, but Robert quickly takes down Teddy's man. After that, Robert leaves the diner and sees Teddy in a car. He snaps a photo of Teddy with his phone. Teddy and his crew chase Robert to his apartment, but he's not there. They search, hoping to find something about Robert's identity, but they only find drugs and ripped sports tickets. Unbeknownst to them, Robert is somewhere else, watching them through a hidden camera in his apartment. Knowing he's up against a huge Russian criminal group, Robert decides to see his old friend Susan Palmer at the Defense Intelligence Agency. She uses her resources to give Robert info about Vladimir Pushkin and his dealings. Susan tells Robert that Teddy's real name is Nikolai Ichenko. After getting all the info he needs, Robert lets Susan know he's not asking for help, just permission. To take down Pushkin's operations in the US, Robert heads to Pushkin's money vault. There, he easily subdues all of Pushkin's men, locks them in the fridge, and then calls the police. He leaves evidence in the form of a memory stick loaded with info about Pushkin's illegal stuff. In the evening, Teddy is having dinner at a fancy restaurant. Suddenly, a man shows up. He's a trained killer hired by Teddy to get rid of Robert. But not long after that, Robert enters the restaurant and goes up to Teddy. Robert hands Teddy the assassin's broken glasses with blood on them. Robert already knows about Teddy's past and warns him to stop coming after him. He promises to take down Pushkin's criminal group. Later, Robert destroys oil tankers that belong to Pushkin and eventually wipes out Pushkin's whole business in the US. After that, Teddy makes a plan to trap Robert. Teddy and his crew go to Home Mart and take Robert's co-workers as hostages. Teddy calls Robert and threatens to hurt them if he doesn't show up at the store soon. But Robert expects this. He sneaks into the control room and uses the loudspeaker to distract Teddy and his crew. He takes down some of Teddy's men and frees Ralphie. He asks Ralphie to help the other co-workers escape out the back. Once he's sure Ralphie and everyone are safe, Robert turns off the main lights in the store, leaving only dim spotlights. He takes out Teddy's men, one by one, using tools he finds there. Eventually, he faces Teddy and kills him using a nail gun. 3 days later, Robert goes to Moscow and takes down all of Pushkin's guards at his mansion. He tricks Pushkin into accidentally killing himself by electrocution. With Pushkin gone, it's certain that his illegal stuff has come to an end. Back in the US, Robert meets Alina outside a store. She's healed from her injuries and tells Robert she started a better life after escaping from slavery. Alina thanks Robert for giving her a fresh start and gives him a light kiss on the cheek. Seeing what happened to Alina and her co-workers inspires Robert to keep using his skills to help others. In the evening, Robert heads to his usual diner, like always, but this time he brings a laptop along. He posts an online ad, now calling himself the Equalizer, ready to help those in need. The moral lesson of the story is always bring your own tea bags and silverware to the restaurant. You might just end up becoming an unexpected hero with a fancy new nickname.